Coming up today on David versus Goliath. Everyone needs help with data. I know that I need help with data. My wife watching this is going to know that I need help with data. Spicing things up here with the red brick wall wonder.
I can get fired up.
Yeah!
Welcome to today's episode of David versus Goliath, a podcast dedicated to helping small businesses leverage technology to not only help them compete against their large competitors, but win. Your host is currently the CEO of Anthem Business Software, a three-time Inc. 500 recipient, and a serial entrepreneur with a passion to help small businesses everywhere find, serve, and keep more customers profitably. Please join me in welcoming your host, Adam DeGraide.
Hey everyone, it's Adam DeGraide from the David versus Goliath podcast. Welcome to quarter 4 here in the year 2022. Today I'm going to be interviewing Ryan Buick from Canvas. He's the co-founder, a data analytics company, how they're using data more effectively and efficiently in your business. It's going to be a lot of fun. Today's episode is brought to us by AutomateMySocial.com, where if you're a small business, you can automate 90 to 100% of your social media across all your channels and never have to think about it again. That means forever. You set it up, you set it and forget it. It runs itself. And if you do need to customize it, schedule custom things, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I don't know if that's the proper term, but that's the one we're using here today on the David versus Goliath podcast. That's AutomateMySocial.com. Check it out. You can also get up to 20% discount if you sign up today. Also, want to thank you so much and make sure that you visit our website at davidvsgoliathpodcast.com. There you can subscribe for our newsletter and also apply to be on the podcast, just like many of these fine folks have done. Tell us about your business. Let us know what you're up to. And who knows, maybe you too could be interviewed on the David versus Goliath podcast. Well, anyway, with no further ado, let's get right into it today with Ryan. Welcome to the David versus Goliath podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Adam.
You made it. You made it. And so glad you could actually be here with us and spend some time. I, as a fellow software developer myself and someone that has a passion for it, always love interviewing new tech startups. And that's exactly what Canvas is. I can't believe that name wasn't taken, truth be told. It's a pretty obvious name, but it was good for you in getting that. Tell the folks how you came up with the name. Yeah,
so definitely a tough name to have as your first startup name out of the gates. But we at Canvas we're building a no-code analytics tool for mainly business teams who want to be able to analyze data without having to rely on engineering. And one of the things that we're doing that's a little bit different is it's actually instead of a rigid sort of dashboard interface, it's actually a free-flowing canvas. So it looks a lot like Figma or Mural or Miro, those tools, if you've ever used those, but if they decided to do data. And so you essentially have this big blank infinite canvas that you can drag tables onto, create charts, do pivot tables, really arrange the way that you want instead of being stuck in sort of this rigid, hey, I want to go check a few metrics versus I want to explore some data. You can do really whatever you need to do in the moment, and you're not dependent on the interface. You can make it whatever you want. So that's how we came up with the name. It's not very creative, but
it's okay. A lot of data guys that I've worked with over the years, they're not the most creative cats in the world, but they are smart. And one of the things that I love, as a matter of fact, TJ's my producer. TJ, when you actually go to edit this, pull up his website and then under use cases, go look at some of his templates. Click on templates. One of the things that I thought was fascinating, and the viewers can see it right now. You and I are not going to be able to see it. Is what you broke it out by. This is almost built like for companies exactly like I actually build and start. You're looking at monthly recurring revenue, this template that you have. You have revenue. You have customer lifetime value. You have net MRR churn. Now, most people wouldn't know what that means, but basically that is what is your monthly recurring revenue net after your churn. And then you look at quick ratios. You have transactions. I think this is something that I actually could use for my businesses, and I find it fantastic because, as you mentioned, in the previous business, one of the reasons why you decided to start Canvas was it was always frustrating to be in meetings when the CEO or the CTO or the CFO are together and they're trying to figure out, hey, what is our net MRR churn? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what is our customer lifetime value and how can we know these things? And, and I think as small businesses that are watching this, some of them don't have the MRR model, right? They have a unit model where they don't necessarily worry about monthly recurring revenue. They worry about monthly revenue from a net perspective, a service perspective. There's different ways to look at your business. I'm assuming that your software is flexible enough to work not only with pure SaaS businesses, but also the traditional business that does inventory units, whether there's a service component or not. Is that fair to say? Or is it built primarily or specifically for more of the SaaS-based model?
Yeah, it's a great question. So really the pain point that we are trying to solve is it's really difficult for the average operator, for the average business person to get the data that they need out of all of their various tools that they use, including their own database, Salesforce, Stripe, QuickBooks, Zendesk, all of those different tools. It just so happens that a lot of SaaS companies use those tools.
That's right.
But if you're not a SaaS company and you use Xero for accounting, we've seen time and time again that either you need to know SQL as an operator or you're stuck exporting data out of your tools, putting it into Google Sheets, index matching your way to an answer, right? And so what we've decided to do is basically build integrations to those tools. And instead of you having to do 6 table joins to get, that ARR chart, what we're doing is basically providing you templates that will look at the data coming out of the tool and just pre-model it so that you have a prefabricated metric or a prefabricated table that you can then explore. And that changes, the options that an early stage startup has, where traditionally you'd have to work with a data consultant to, get all of that data centralized and then get all of it modeled, when really everyone, 80% of people just want the same 20% of startup metrics out of Stripe or out of QuickBooks or out of Salesforce. And so that's really what we're just starting to do with those templates that you were mentioning. To answer your question, to close it out, is we don't really look as much on the use case level as we do around the actual app level and the integration level. So we look at, what are people doing with this data? What do people most often want to see? And those are the things that we're prioritizing when it comes to those templates.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So the whole concept is you're trying to build these templates that people can grab without having a code. They can have their own data that they're getting out of a tool, whether you have an integration or not. So I would imagine if you do have an integration, it'll automatically drop in. If you don't, they'd grab a CSV, export, they drop it in. They can then drag on top of it the template, look at that data based on what they actually imported themselves. That's awesome. I mean, my only fear is that my wife's probably watching this right now and she's going to be like, hey, we need to start using this because this would make my job a heck of a lot easier. And I think that's awesome. And I think what's really important, Ryan, and why I have a lot of data technology specialists on the David versus Goliath podcast is that so many small businesses, whether you're a startup and you have your own wood refinishing business, or you're a startup and you're an IT tech company like myself, you don't really realize how valuable data is until you get down the road. And so what Ryan is saying is that if you can start with data in mind in the beginning, you can get to the end game quicker, because inevitably you're going to be sitting in a meeting with someone, whether it's time for you to get money raised for your business or to exit the business or to bring a partner in. And the very first question they're going to ask you is, what is your lifetime value? What is your churn rate? What is your customer satisfaction score? What are all these? And then all of a sudden, like usual, companies are scrambling to find that data. And starting with that understanding in beginning and knowing how valuable data is can make all the difference in the world. Now, Ryan, I want to transition a little bit and get away from the data talk a little bit and just talk to you about you in general. So you've had a very interesting career. I noticed that. And then in 2020 is when you started Canvas. Tell people how you got to be in front of the brick wall right now.
It's actually real too. It looks fake. It's a classic Soma loft, I guess. So the story of how we started Canvas. So I was one of the first product managers at a company called Flexport. For your audience that doesn't know, Flexport essentially builds software that helps companies ship their freight from their factories in China to mainly their distribution centers or warehouses in the US and Europe.
Wow.
And joined them back in 2016 or 17. Saw it, take off, probably 200 to 2,000 employees in like 2 years. It was insanity. And met my co-founders there. We were all on the same team. So they were engineers. I was a product manager. And we had seen really just a number of BI tool rollouts, a BI tool being like, a Looker or a Tableau or a Mode, essentially a dashboard builder tool. And we were also building an internal data product there that helped operations employees analyze data with just their spreadsheet skills. And so we were sort of seeing these two things happen. And it's not a very shocking story. I think a lot of startups see this pain where, the data team can only service so much of the organization's questions every day, right? You start to see these long buildups of, we called them bread lines for data, right? It's everyone standing in line with a Jira ticket and their question, and all they want back is just a quick SQL export, that they can then go and answer their own question with. And the data teams at these organizations quickly become overwhelmed because there's just so many people asking so many questions. And so then you as an operator are left with really two choices that I alluded to earlier is, hey, either I know SQL and I learn how to query a database, which takes some time. And most people don't view it as like their day job, right? Or your second option is to go and start exporting data out on a daily or weekly basis into Sheets, which can get really painful. It's error prone. You're having to do it every single time that you want to refresh that metric. And so we were seeing all these things converge and said, hey, we're seeing some success with this spreadsheet like interface. Why don't we go and make it a horizontal platform and connect to the apps that we saw people exporting data out of on a daily basis. And so that's
kind of smart. It's funny that you say that because I think in my life, I'm on my fourth software and marketing company that I've built. I've exited 3 successfully, worth multiple millions of dollars. And some of the best software I've used was programs that people have made themselves in Excel. Yeah. And it was always fascinating. And then to get that power out of a program like that and then to figure out how to McDonaldize it and templatize it for the masses is always the challenge. I like the word McDonaldization. It's a principle I learned. It's a principle I learned really early on. My buddy Sean Wolfington and his uncle, they taught me that, when you go into McDonald's, everything is McDonaldized. It's literally from every aspect of how to flip a burger, how many seconds you flip the burger, to how long you melt the cheese, to, how do you clean the floor, to how do you make the floor cleaner? I mean, everything has been McDonaldized. And that's kind of what businesses are trying to do with data, right? Which is you don't want to have to recreate the wheel every time. You want to be able to have that access to it. But how about on a personal level? How did you end up being the product manager of Flexport? That's, to going from 200 to 2,000, that's a pretty quick growth. And that's a pretty important position. So what is your life's journey personally to get there?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in San Francisco, actually, in the city proper. So when I was growing up, the city was basically just exploding. You were watching all this happen. It was pretty exciting to watch, and I knew I just wanted to be a part of it. So came back, did a couple of internships when I was in college. I ran like a little internet business, and I knew I wanted to work in tech, but not probably have the mindset of sitting down and coding all day. But I wanted to work on that side of the house and use that side of the brain a little bit. So eventually found out what product management was, which essentially is, using every part of your day split up to design or engineering or business or legal or marketing, whatever it may be. Good ADD position. And went and joined that at a couple of startups, and then ended up landing at Flexport right before it started to really take off. So was lucky enough to see that ride and really experience what product management is at a couple of different company stages.
And and this is important for the watchers and listeners. We're going to take a break in a second. Product managers at our business, for example, when I worked with insurance agents and we built software for insurance agents, which we're doing again, by the way. My non-compete is up. And so I'm definitely doing that again right now. But a product manager would be the intermediary, the go-between for the watcher and the listener to work with the user, which in that case was insurance agents and their CSRs and their reps. And then my programming team in the back to decide what features and functionality are the most important. And as you said, the red line list of what kind of data are they looking for to make the software more effective and efficient. So Ryan, when we come back, I want to talk about your setup at Canvas, how you guys are funded, how you got funded, because I think a lot of people need to know about that because they have great ideas, but they have no idea how to do that. You're with Ryan Buick, Adam DeGraide, your host of the David versus Goliath podcast. There's a very important message from our corporate sponsor, AutomateMySocial.com. We'll be right back.
Do you own a business? Do you have or need a social media presence? If you are like most businesses, you spend either no time or too much time and money on your social media strategy, spending thousands of dollars per month only to get mediocre and inconsistent results. This leads to frustration and, in some cases, sleepless nights. Introducing AutomateMySocial.com. Automate 90% of your social media and never have to think about it again. That's right. Automate your business's social media posting and strategy like forever. Automate the essentials and customize only what's needed. Save time, save money, and get better results with AutomateMySocial.com. Our patent-pending technology gives you the ability to automatically create your social post and distribute them immediately, like in seconds, across all your social media platforms. Stop the madness of paying someone to create, post, and manage your strategy, and let our software do the work, so you don't have to. Oh, and if you're an agency or social media manager, you too can let our software do all the work, and you can get all the credit. It will be our little secret. With AutomateMySocial.com, you can have it all. It's easy to use, never complains, and never asks for time off or more benefits. See this amazing new software application at AutomateMySocial.com. If you own a business or manage client social media and want to save time, energy, money, all while increasing your return on investment, then let's get this party started at AutomateMySocial.com.
And we're back with Ryan Buick and your handsome host, Adam DeGraide, on the David versus Goliath podcast, spicing things up here with the red brick wall wonder. Ryan, one of the things that I thought was fascinating, I went to your website. I'm going to go there again really quick. And I for a guy that's not creative, I noticed you were using some flowery language, analytics that feel like magic, templates that feel like magic, integrations that feel like magic. Now, is that something that you came up with as the product manager, or do you have a marketing team that worked with you on the feels like magic?
Yeah, we actually were just playing around with that the other day, and trying to experiment with a lot of different things on the landing page to see what sticks versus what doesn't. So yeah, that was us.
And I think it's awesome. So, and because that's the key, right? Marketing is more. It's more emotional. It's like you got to have steak, but you got to have that sizzle.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things when you go to Benihana's or Kobe Steakhouse or any one of those Japanese places is you sit down at the table. The guy comes out. He's got the egg roll. He flips it around. He's throwing knives in the air. Throws that steak down. You hear that. That's kind of like sales. What are you doing right now for marketing? Speaking of marketing, so those are things that you're experimenting, A and B, I would imagine, how to make the landing page more effective and efficient. What are you doing right now to acquire new customers and to get the brand out?
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of just honestly founder sales and investor intros and working your internal network and just doing some outbound on the side, but no real paid advertising. a lot of content. So, trying to write about things that we know that our customers are going through. So, for example, early stage startups that are trying to decide between, rolling out their own data stack, finding consultants to do it, hiring a data team, all these different options that you have, and people just want practical advice on what to do. So we write a lot about content there, and then we write a lot about metrics. So, everyone's concerned about extending your runway right now and making sure that you stay alive with, where the market's at. And so
it's terrible. It's an absolute travesty what's happening in the market, and money is basically dried up, and it's very, 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 very frustrating. But I would imagine that angel investors that invest in startups and private equity firms and things like that would be a target for you guys to go out and to educate to you, because a lot, whether they're doing an early stage investment or they're looking at their own portfolios in general, having a program like yourself that they can install into their network would be helpful. Is that one of your target markets as well, or am I reading too much into that?
Yeah, it's they're a little bit more transactional than having continuous data that you want to pull off or pull from. Really, but they invest in the companies that need that data. Yes, so that's a different conversation, and that's definitely something that we're working with VCs on content for. Hey, this is what your SaaS benchmark should look like. Hey, this is how stage whatever company is evaluated, and then hey, here's the metrics, and here's the easiest way to build them. That's absolutely what we want to be. That's
awesome. That's really, really cool. How did you get funded? Is it bootstrapped? Or did you actually go raise some money yourself?
Yeah. So when we left Flexport, we knew that we didn't want to bootstrap ourselves. And so what we did is basically went out and put together, to go through the whole process, right? We talked to hundreds of people, did a ton of customer research. It's a big area. It's a big problem.
There's a lot of people in it too right now.
It's a massively crowded space. And so we knew that we needed to do a lot of validation before we could go out and, effectively communicate the story that we wanted to tell. So did a lot of research, synthesized that together, put together a prototype, put together a deck, and then, hit the road. Or it was during COVID, so it was all on Zoom, which was bizarre. But
it was really bizarre. Yeah. I've sold 3 companies worth a lot of money, and 2 of them have been, you press the flesh for like 6 months, which was pure torture. Yeah. And then COVID came around, and I closed a massive transaction all via Zoom. I'm like, this is the way to do this. This is so much better, because then you don't have the nonsense of having the all day, lifting up your skirt, so to speak, on both sides. And then you got to go pretend like you actually like each other at dinner. And it was so much better. We did the 4 or 5 hour Zoom meetings. I yelled at their CFO. They yelled at my CFO. We yelled at each other. And then, at dinner, it was me talking about them at dinner, and they were out to dinner talking about me. And that was a heck of a lot nicer. But so that's how you raise money. I'll tell you, it's not going to be easy the next time you go do it. You know that, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to hide behind a screen. It's going to be, pressing the flesh is a lot different than these the world we live in. And you know what's really creeping me out, man? And this is not to change subjects, but I love this stuff. My son plays Oculus. He's 7, and so he does that thing where his thing's on there. And I keep seeing these meta commercials about how the future is virtual. The future is virtual, and I get that to some degree, but man, it scares the living crap out of me to think that people are going to want to live behind a screen in their eyes versus going to see a real one. Yeah, man. It's like, it's not just that. It's like all the things I've read. Like, I don't know if you've ever read 1984. I think probably going to get banned just by mentioning the book's name here on the podcast. But, I was reading 1984 during 2020, and the whole thing, man, it just, every day I wake up and every day I read the articles, every day I say to myself, wait a minute. This is looking more and more like that. And that's not to get political, by the way. That's just my own personal observations going through 2020 and thinking about our virtual world. Now, Ryan, how big is your team currently right now?
Yeah, just a handful of folks in San Francisco. So still staying relatively small. We have a decent amount that we know that we need to build before we want to make sure that we go and do big launches.
And I think one of the things that's important, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have a great idea, Ryan, and they've never raised money before. I mean, you came from it, being in Silicon Valley and being there in San Francisco and being around it, I would imagine, in most of your professional life. But there's people in Idaho and Iowa and in the middle of even Florida where I live that they've never raised money before, or they've never taken money from a private equity company. You had a lot of experience doing that, but what would be the key advice that you would give to that person right now? What's the most important thing that they have to have together before they go present somebody and ask them for money?
I think the most important thing is, there's a couple of important things, right? Like first is you need to have the expertise and, the know-how, right? You've been working in whatever space that you want to go raise in, or whatever problem that intimately, right? I think that's the first thing, is like knowledge and passion about the problem that you're solving. And then second is the ability to validate your research, right? The ability to say, hey, we've quantified this is the problem, or we've quantified that, this solution is X better. And I think like the biggest thing is just being able to communicate how you're different, especially in an industry like ours that has 1 million players in it, right? Like you can't just be better, you have to be different. So I think like there's a combination of those few things that really need to be cohesive before you go out and start to raise money. But yeah, if I were to sum it up, it'd be expertise, conviction, and also the ability to market yourself as being not only better, but different.
I think conviction's it's an important word. Now, did you use an IB? Did you use an investment banker to help you?
No, we just ran it ourselves.
You ran your Rolodex. You guys have been hanging around there in Tinseltown of software so long. You had a Rolodex of where all the money's buried.
It does make it.
And 2020 was a good year to raise money because money was basically free, and so it was a good time to strike. That's really, really, really interesting. If you were going to do it again, would you do anything differently in raising money, or do you feel like you nailed it?
I think we did well. I think you definitely want to make sure that, and this is another, thing that relates to the conviction, is you need to make sure that you have a decent idea of the problem that you're solving for who and how you're solving it, because those are the details that can change. And so you want to make sure that you have people in your corner that know the space really well and that know, that can help you as you're sort of navigating these different turns throughout your company building. So the more conviction that you have and the more evidence that you're able to mount that, this is the problem that we want to solve specifically, is always better. And if you don't have that, go and work on that problem definition before you think that you need to go and raise a bunch of money.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. Well, that's great. Well, we're going to take another break from another sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to have a little fun. I'm going to see if I can get you fired up. My instincts tell me that's not going to happen, but I'm going to try like heck here on the David versus Goliath podcast with Ryan Buick from Canvas and Adam DeGraide from David versus Goliath. This might be the most mellow episode I've ever done, and we're going to try to liven it up after the break. We'll be right back.
At ISU RMAC Agency, we want to be your one responsible source for all of your insurance needs. From a rocket engineer in California to several hospitals in Illinois, our personal lines team specializes in hard-to-place risks and high-net-worth clientele. With 2 locations and 20-plus agents, we can write in all 50 states to better serve our clients with needs in multiple states. Family-owned and operated since 1962, and 4 generations carrying on the tradition of insurance. Celebrating our 60th year in the industry, we are truly proud of where we have come from and where we are going. With over 300 carriers nationwide, our agency can offer individuals and businesses more choices and better prices. ISU RMAC brings a wide variety of solutions to the table. For more information, visit us online at www.isu-rmac.com.
I'm going to jolt them, shock them back into existence. Ryan, when was the last time you got excited and actually screamed at the top of your lungs and lifted your hands up in the air and said, yeah? Has that ever happened?
Sorry, I missed the first part because I was trying to connect my headphones.
When was the last time you ever got fired up? Like fired up? Do you ever get fired up? Or is that just not in you? I said, it's so funny. I was saying to myself, man, I would imagine just going to see a football game with Ryan. Like, he would be just like, he'd be sitting next to me and he'd be like, the defense made that mistake because this guy was 2 centimeters out of position. The quarterback was a half a second too late. I'm like, dude, get fired up, man.
All calculated.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, you're definitely getting like the Monday like post lunch hour right now. Yeah, no, we need to raise the bar a little bit.
You need to get stimmed up and ready to burn, man. It's funny though, because you talked about conviction, which I think is really important, right? And as a small business owner, you got to get fired up and you got to believe. And when you think about Ryan's past, working in these other businesses, being product manager, to leave and to go out and start your own thing, that takes a lot of like conviction of yourself too. That you had the ability to do it. And it wasn't just experience. There's also an innate something in an entrepreneur that says, not only do I know I can do this, I have the conviction that this is a great product, but we're going to go do that. In your life growing up, from as a child to where you are now, was that conviction always a part of your life, that belief in the fact that you could achieve things and you could do things? And where did you get that from? Did you learn that? Was it from a mentor? Was it from a parent? Was it from a sibling? People always wonder, like, what's the journey of somebody from childhood to sitting in front of the brick wall, being a funded company in Silicon Valley? And I think to make it a human story, it's important to know that. Yeah. And so what is that for you?
Yeah, definitely. So my dad ran, funny enough, because you're saying how mellow I am right now, but my dad actually ran a bunch of bars and restaurants that he owned for probably 30 years. And so I grew up in there and saw, how much work that he had put into it and what it meant to run your own thing. And, I think the freedom that you have from that, but also the level of responsibility and the level of, dedication and hard work and attention to detail that it takes to make something stand out. And so I think that was probably like my main inspiration, even though he barely turned on a computer. But
it doesn't matter. You know what's funny? It doesn't matter. Like, the principles of business, the principles of entrepreneurship in life is not about software or technology. Yeah. It's about everything else. So your dad was a huge influence. And did you work in the restaurants and the bars?
I did not. I don't even think that he would let me. I was too young at that point, but like, I think he did everything in his power to scare me away from being in the industry, because it's a brutal one.
It is a tough one, man. I mean, you think it's tough in Silicon Valley. I think 90% of all restaurants don't survive right after 3 years or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a tough space. But if you can get past it, and you can build a little franchise, little network with some MRR and predictable revenue, you can trade at a pretty high multiple, get somebody to give you a lot of money for a little bit of work.
Exactly. And that's the best part about San Francisco too, is that you have most of the establishments that are around, like they've been there for 50 years, right? Because it's so valuable and it's such a good business that it would never turn over. Whereas, the place next door to it is turning over every 1.5 years.
Isn't that interesting? It's funny. I was driving down the road the other day here, and in Orlando, we got a place called Sand Lake Road. And on Sand Lake Road, you've got, Eddie V's, Ruth's Chris, Morton's, you've got Seasons 52, you got these big brands. And then there's a couple of places on Sand Lake in this prime real estate that no matter what they put in there, it will not survive. And I'm talking about Class A, prime real estate. Big name restaurants have come in and they can't survive. It's like there's a vortex in that unit. And every time I see a new shingle go up, I wish I could talk to the owner and say, don't do it. It's cursed. There's a curse. There's probably some data metric or template we could run to figure out what's actually causing that problem there. But, some of my favorite restaurants have been in there, but they can't survive. And the one next to it's not that great. And yet here it stands. And it is a very fascinating thing. So your dad was a big influence on you. How about your professional career? What about, have you come across anybody that you'd say, he or she was a really big mentor for you?
A bunch in different and small ways. And I think like the interesting part about being in the position that you're in now as a founder is that if you had one mentor that was, just a product person, like that's great, but you need 4 or 5 of those, right? Like in different disciplines. And so, yeah, a small army of people that I think have been really helpful and are still helpful every day as we're going through, the journey that we're on. And, you need a sales mentor, you need a marketing mentor, you need a product mentor, you need it across the board for you to be able to succeed. So yeah, that's been huge.
My advice to you is do not hire Harvard or Yale graduates. Just kidding. I love having the show. I have so many buddies of mine that are Harvard and Yale graduates over the years, and I've had some coworkers of mine and some C-level executives that I've hired from these giant institutions. And let's put it this way: I'd rather get a guy with street smarts who's been arrested 4 times and came out with a few bruises on him than somebody who hasn't got a few bruises and been smacked around a little bit, especially in sales. Especially in sales makes a huge difference. You want that street smarts. So how can people find out about you and find you right now?
Yeah, definitely. So canvasapp.com is our website. So canvasapp.com. Our Twitter handle is @canvas, which is easy to remember. And
that's a good Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Now that Elon's going to take it over, your chances of getting banned are a lot less, which is good.
Yeah, we need to request our check mark. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. It's my first name's Ryan, last name's Buick, Buick. Would love to chat and help you out if you need help with data.
Everyone needs help with data. I know that I need help with data. My wife watching this is going to know that I need help with data. Don't be surprised if you get a phone call from me and her saying we need help with data. But Ryan, this has probably been a little bit different than you thought it was going to be. But did you enjoy your time here on David versus Goliath?
Yes, man. This is a ton of fun. Thank you.
All right, dude. Next time we're going to put some electric shocks in your chair on the other side, and I'm going to go, and you're going to be like, yeah. And anyway, it was great. Would you come back on in 24 months and let us know how Canvas is doing?
Of course. Let's do a Friday afternoon with a beer, maybe, and we'll
that'll fire you up a little bit.
Yeah.
It is awesome. Well, it's been awesome spending time with you. Thank you so much for joining me on the David vs. Goliath podcast. You're with Ryan Buick from canvasapp.com, Adam DeGraide, your handsome host from David vs. Goliath podcast. By the way, thank you to AutomateMySocial.com, our corporate sponsor. Go check it out. Remember, you can automate 90 to 100% of your social media as a business and never think about it again. And that's the truth. Go check it out at AutomateMySocial.com. Everyone, thank you for tuning in, listening, and watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Have an awesome day.